What is going on, Don't Unfriend Me Nation? Matthew Spear from the Don't Unfriend Me Show. Are we talking about something exciting? Are we going to talk about something that's going to throw our hair back and just get us in the mood for this impending summer that's upon us? Nope. This isn't going to be the most exciting show, but it is going to explain some things and help put it in perspective, specifically about balancing the budget and why it's important. And I think most of us who have a checkbook and a house or an apartment and have some sort of budget that we live on understand. But obviously, this is extremely complex when you're talking about trillions of dollars being spent and unaccounted for, and why that is hurting our government so much. Tonight, we will be on at 8:30 live. Olivia, like I said, has been added to the show. So we will be back from our playoff game with our son's baseball team. Go Sox. Let's hope they do well. At 8:30, we'll have a live show. But tonight and this afternoon, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking once again about the budget. And this is all in the news because the debt ceiling is looming, and Republicans are taking credit for passing a bill that looks nothing like the original one that they passed in the House. And the Democrats are touting success, even though they didn't get to spend the trillions upon trillions more than what they're actually able to spend. And it actually is being considered a compromise, and it's no such thing. It really is a fleecing for the Republicans, and we'll talk about that. But the United States has struggled to balance its budget for decades. This is nothing new, and everyone is oohing and awing that this is going to shut down the world and we're going to have a lower credit rating, which has happened before. It's never good. It's not a good thing. It impacts the stock market, real estate, inflation, all these type of things. But if we take a look at those things now, they're not much better. But regardless of which political party holds power, this is true. And understanding the reasons behind this ongoing challenge is essential to grasp the significance of budgetary balance for our nation's future. The last time the United States had a budget surplus, meaning that revenues exceeded expenditures, was in the late 1990s. Specifically, the federal budget was balanced in the fiscal year of 2001 during the presidency of Bill Clinton. At the time, the government experienced a surplus of $127 billion. However, since then, the budget has been in a state of deficit, with expenditures exceeding revenues, leading to the accumulation of national debt. Now, it's kind of a false positive with Bill Clinton because what did he do? Well, he robbed Peter to pay Paul. He cut defense spending. And then what happened? Well, we went into Afghanistan and Iraq shortly after 9/11, and this created the conundrum of having to spend a multifaceted war and replenish the nation's military. Once again, certainly what Bill Clinton would consider a good move at the time until the Twin Towers were hit, and then obviously you heard the proverbial pucker happen across Washington. But the last time before that the federal budget was truly balanced, which wasn't creating a surplus, but balancing the budget and only spending what they're allocated for, was in 1960. Most of you either were not born or just a gleam in your daddy's eye. But one significant obstacle is mandatory spending when it comes to balancing the budget. This category includes entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which form a substantial portion of the federal budget. Now, presidents did not create this in most recent memory, but they are required to go ahead and spend that money. That's the programs that we're talking about. And that includes the post office or three-letter agencies or Department of Defense. There are certain things like defense contracts that have been a mainstay in the budget since 1970. McDonnell Douglas, Skunk Works, Grumman, all of these type of defense contracts that have continued to create military weaponry for the defense, and we don't renegotiate these contracts just every 10 years or so. These are mandatory spends that presidents may have to handle and may have to put into their supposed budget or overall spend, but very rarely are they something that creates more freedom or more free room and creates discretionary spending, and this is the problem with them. These programs are obviously crucial for social welfare or government defense, but their costs are set to rise as the population ages or technology advances. It makes it difficult to achieve budgetary balance without comprehensive reform efforts, which is the one thing that the government has not done. Another structural challenge is interest payments on the national debt. As the debt accumulates, as we know with the credit card, the government spends an increasing amount on interest payments, limiting more available funds for discretionary spending and creating a cycle that hampers the budget balance. And this is no more apparent than in the last 30 years, where we saw sub $2 to $3 trillion in national debt, saw a huge boom in 2013 and 14, moving from 12.5 all the way up to somewhere close to $30 trillion over the last 10 years. Political priorities and voter expectations often influence budgetary decisions. Elected officials face pressures to fulfill campaign promises and meet constituents' demands, which can lead to increased government spending. We're seeing it in this proposed debt increase or ceiling increase on our debt with Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden. The desire for short-term results sometimes overshadows the long-term consequences of budgetary imbalance. There's ideological differences between political parties, as we know, and it contributes to the challenge. Parties often have divergent views on the role and size of government. Republicans want less, Democrats want more. And this leads to varying spending priorities. Additionally, disagreements over tax policies further complicate budget balancing efforts. Republicans want to spend less, Democrats want to spend more, even though sometimes Democrats spend less and Republicans spend more, but it just really depends on what party platform they want to hold on to and what's important to the general public at the time. And that introduces another factor, is the court of public opinion. And now that you understand some of the reasons behind the budget imbalance, we should discuss why achieving budgetary balance is vital, regardless of political party and who you stand for. Balancing the budget is crucial for maintaining economic stability. Persistent budget deficits and a growing national debt have detrimental effects on the economy. They can lead to increased interest payments, limiting resources available for critical investments, and hampering the government's ability to respond to economic crisis. A balanced budget ensures fiscal sustainability for future generations. Chronic deficits and mounting debt burden future generations with financial obligations, limiting the government's ability to invest in areas like education, infrastructure, and social welfare programs. And that could be a good thing based upon how much of the draw social welfare programs are causing to the budget right now, which are considerable. If we look at one thing, we want to take a look at what happened. We were looking at 1960, from 1960 to 1996, $1.2 to $2.3 trillion deficit increase over that time. But something happened in the last 30 years, predominantly in 2012 and 2013, when all of a sudden trillions was added to the deficit, but no account for it. In fact, it seemed like there was over $9.6 trillion added, but there was only an account from the U.S. government of about 4.9. Where did the extra money come from? Well, we saw it in the Department of Defense, specifically had to replenish the military. More Bush, because remember, Bill Clinton was on the way out during 9/11. And George Bush was in office at the time. So what you saw was a replenishment of the Department of Defense, but it was discretionary spending. It wasn't on the books. And this is where we saw almost $4 trillion added to the deficit, but we have no idea where it came from. Well, we obviously do. It just wasn't accounted for. But when you achieve budgetary balance, we ensure that the future generations are not unfairly burdened with our fiscal responsibility. And that is the misnomer. That is the thing that we all seem to not understand is people say, well, it's $96,000 per U.S. citizen. Yeah, but that's really not the number you need to focus on. You need to focus on the taxpayer, the people who actually pay the taxes, because every U.S. citizen isn't able to work. You look at children under the age of 18 or 16 with a worker's permit. You look at the elderly. You look at the disabled. You look at, and you get down to a number of about $246,000 per taxpayer. And that sounds a hell of a lot different than $96,000. Balanced budgets are essential for national security as well. And escalating debt weakens the United States' global position as it becomes increasingly dependent on foreign borrowing. This reliance compromises our national security, our sovereignty, and it limits our ability to act independently in time of crisis, tying our boat to Saudi Arabia or South America, or even asking Iran for oil. Isn't that right, Joe Biden? Balancing the budget promotes intergenerational equity, ensuring that current future generations have fair access to resources and opportunities. And when we say equity, it doesn't mean equal outcome. It's in the dollar sense that there's money available for future generations to prosper and do as well as you and I. By avoiding excessive debt accumulation, we prevent future generations from inheriting an unsustainable financial burden. The graph that I showed you earlier, when you look at the flat spots, these depict the uniquely American political charade of the debt ceiling, similar to what we're seeing right now. Those periods when the gross national debt bounced into the debt ceiling as set by Congress. These flat spots are the days when everyone in Congress is trying to hijack the debt ceiling law in order to arm twist the other side into approving their favorite priorities. And it's kind of funny. Congress, thank you for that hilarious charade of working for the American people. When the analysis comes out of 2023 and the last 2 or 3 weeks, you will see the same flattening, just like you saw in previous years. During that debt ceiling charade, Congress tells the administration to keep spending the money that Congress told it to spend via the spending bills, but prohibits the administration from borrowing the money that Congress told it to spend. If the last is beyond the out-of-money date, the U.S. government would have to default, which would set off some magnificent fireworks in the financial markets. Each time after a debt ceiling charade is resolved in Congress, the administration is then free to borrow the money that Congress told it to spend, and the U.S. national debt spikes to make up for the splat spots. That's what it should be called, the flat spots. The one thing the debt ceiling never does, ever though, is slow down the growth of the U.S. national debt. Government has a very serious problem. It's that they want to do everything for everyone, and unfortunately, that costs money. The United States government has a very difficult job on its hands, and that is literally taking care of the promises that were made before they were even in office, and obligatory spending somehow being accountable to the people who are actually spending it. And what I mean by that is I want you to imagine a drug addict, and he does a couple lines of cocaine every single day. And then those couple of lines turn into a few more lines, and those few more lines turn into an 8-ball. And then that person is doing a ton of cocaine every day, and they are spending more than they make to keep up with their drug habit. And then one day, the American people see this young man and say, hey, you need to slow down. I'm going to do you a favor. I need you to look at all the cocaine you're buying, and then I need you to look at your finances, and then I need you to come up with some very conservative estimates on what you should spend on cocaine versus what you do. Can you do that for me? And then repeatedly, every 4 years and every year that we play this charade, ask for the same thing as that person buys kilo after kilo and is more and more in debt. And we were so surprised that the drug addict had absolutely no restraint and control and cared about nobody but himself. Folks, thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me show. I appreciate it. My name is Matthew Spear. I'm the host of Don't Unfriend Me. If you would do me one solid, stop by at The Dumb Show across all social media. You can stop by podcasts and find us there at The Don't Unfriend Me Show. Like, share, follow, and subscribe if you would. And then if you could stop by the Don't Unfriend Me store, you can buy shirts like this, hats, coffee, all of that. TheDumbShow.com. Use code DUM10 to save 10%. And remember, 10% goes back to the Travis Manion Foundation. Thank you, God bless, and I will see you tonight. And if not, see you tomorrow with a new show.
I'm David Boreanaz with the Cast of SEAL team, and we have an important message for returning vets.
We want you to know if you're struggling to cope, there's help and it's just a phone call away.
The Veterans Crisis Line is staffed with experienced professionals who know your struggles.
There's no greater sacrifice in service to our country. We're able to enjoy our freedoms because of it.
Your service is important, you are important.
For vets and their families, the Veterans Crisis Line is here to help 24 hours a day. Please call